You are advised that attendees should not disclose any personal information of individuals, as this would infringe the data protection rights of that individual. Right, so item 1, apologies. Do we have any apologies, Mr. Tarrant?
Councillors Knight and Councillor Pullinger.
Councillor Knight and Councillor Pullinger. Fine, okay, thank you. Declaration of interests. To receive statutory declarations of interest in relation to disclosable pecuniary interests, non-pecuniary interests in any agenda item. Councillor Strawn.
Non-pecuniary interest in item 10A.
Right. Any more? No. Right. Right, public open session. I see we do have a number of members of the public here, which is very nice to see. But at this stage, it's probably worth mentioning that the item on the allotments policy and terms and conditions will not be discussed and is to be deferred to another meeting, because the format and clarity of what is being proposed, well, it's unclear what is being proposed with the documentation that you have. However, general questions and comments will be welcomed. So would anybody like to make a statement on? Fine, thank you. Okay, go ahead. Turn the microphone on if you can.
Turn what?
On. Oh, it's on already.
It's on. Okay, all right, sorry. Now you've said you've taken it off. Maybe that makes my bit, not quite so relevant, but I think some of the comments I've got to make may well be helpful in going forward. Is that okay? So I'll say good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I've not done this before, so you'll have to bear with me. Take the glasses off. Can't see you, but I can see to read now. I'm here to represent the views of the Biggleswade Allotment Association, as well as those who are non-members who've been approaching us all about their concerns over various matters. First, I would like to address the agenda item 6B, the allotment plan, which I believe is an oral update and that a decision could well be made tonight. Now, I wrote this before I knew that you'd made some changes. We have concerns and wonder if this could be made a written plan for us to actually look at and read and make some comments on, hopefully, before anything's finalised. Now, I'd like to come on to the allotment policy terms and conditions. Having read them, there are a number of items giving cause for concern. The tracking through from the documents from one to the beginning, the tracking and out, they're not consistent in going right the way through. So there's some concerns there. There's detail there that would take too much time to go into. However, there are some comments I'd like to make on its content, and it might be helpful in you going forward if you're not going to talk about it now. Firstly, the rise of the deposit from £50 to £150, and I'm sure you can understand a lot of concerns there. A huge increase, which when combined with the rent increase that's been proposed, will make the initial outlay for taking on a plot out of the hands of the very people who need them the most, not very inclusive at all. I think that's causing us great concern. Also, in addition to this, it's proposed of withholding the deposit if a plot is not left in good order. And I know that stands at the moment at £50, but it needs to be clarified. What does it mean to be not in good order? It's very subjective. I've had 2 experiences where someone just says, oh no, okay, I'll withhold the deposit. We need to be very clear what is good order, what is not good order, what is your expectations of good order. Most new plot holders that I know do clear the plots, the majority of themselves. I've cleared 2 plots, taken my stuff down to the dump. It hasn't cost the council anything at all. And unless there's a huge amount to be removed that needs a tip or something, then we do a lot ourselves. The roads, oh, please God, the roads. The terms and conditions says vehicles are not allowed on the tracks when the ground is wet and soft. And we'd all agree that's extremely sensible. What I'd like to know, can you explain, does this include the council tractors? Because to be quite honest, they're the major cause of the ruts, particularly during the winter. We're not allowed. And if you saw the ruts and the potholes, because they're going up and down, it's making them impassable. And anyone with any mobility issues, and I've been on crutches for months, I couldn't walk on to my plot. And that really is discriminating. And a health and safety issue as well. There are a lot of other things, but I'll go on to Appendix 1, the buildings and the water butts section. Have you tried buying a greenhouse or a polytunnel that's 4 square foot? Let alone trying to grow your tomatoes in one? It's not possible, but that's the conditions you've put. Not easy by any means. The water butts, a very, very strange one that's popped in. Have any of you tried getting water out of a water butt that's sunk into the ground? Have you got water butts at home? Where are your taps? They're right on the bottom. You won't get her. Okay, so if you know how it's can be done, please do tell us. We'd be very grateful. But that's something in there that's just not. There are a number of other items which could be clearer. I haven't got time to go into them all, but we could sit down and discuss them together if you were willing. But it does highlight that consultation together, for those of us that do work our plots, do know what gardening and allotmenteering is about, would save you time, energy, and an awful lot of frustration and maybe some anger on our parts. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Well, all those points are duly noticed. Would anybody else like to make any?
Sessions we were in the public session.
Yes. Would you like to make a comment then?
Shall I do it now?
Yes, please. Yes.
It's regarding the rent increase. At the last session here, there was a decision taken to increase the rents by over 120%. Confirmed to all our tenants in a letter to the council. And we believe that information given to the elected councillors was flawed. Because the letter listed a number of facts outlining work and extra costs to the council, including, and I quote, root and branch review of actual work completed. Council also carried out a review on other allotment rents in the area, which ended up with us having an inflation busting increase. Biggleswade Allotment Association raised an objection to this based on the actual work completed in the last several years and our own findings regard average allotment charges, which did not compare with the information given out to the tenants in the council letter. The allotment costs of our closest neighbours in Potton, Gamblingay, Stotfold and Bedford varied along with the plot sizes, and to gain a better understanding of the actual costs on an equal basis, we converted it to cost per square metre. These varied between 17 pence and 28 pence, and believe it or not, Biggleswade, as it currently stands, comes in at 51 pence, by far the highest so far in our area. We went a little further afield to Hertfordshire. We did find they do charge more at £157 per plot. But that's based on a standard 10-pole allotment, which is 250 square metres. They also have a better security, paths and fencing than we have. I've just had that Biggleswade is around about 100 square metres. So for that £157, you get 1.5 times the size of the plot. And I think that's an important, very important fact that needs to be considered. Biggleswade Allotment Association, we've submitted written evidence to support our findings, but to date, not had a response back. And we are seeking clarification. This committee has been informed of our objections. If a final decision has been made, because we have a number of very worried tenants, will have no choice but to relinquish that box. And many of them, it's only means of getting out for exercise and meeting with other people. I also say that the association would like to gain a better understanding of the allotment accounts. But we could see no evidence of any financial losses in the last several years that we've looked at the accounts. So unless we're actually missing something, the allotments currently is not losing money, despite us being told that it is losing considerable money. Finally, I'd just like to say that the association is more than happy to discuss in detail any of the above or if requested. And we'd like to say that we are not unrealistic. We do understand the workload and we do understand what can and can't be done within current costs. So we're not ignorant of that fact. We have a fairly good understanding what can be done. And all we ask is that we are informed and consulted. We can play a very important part to help the council as well as our members and non-members for that matter. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for those comments. Does anybody else? Councillor Whitaker.
Thank
Thank
you, Councillor North. I just wanted to let the members of the public speak first, because I have written something, but I know that they wanted to say. And so I'll try not to repeat anything they've said, but as you know, I emailed all members 2 weeks ago, setting out why the price rises for next year are unjustified and the benchmarking was flawed. So just a reminder, a full-size plot is 250 square metres, 10 poles. Biggleswade full-size plot is 100 square metres. So if you're doing it price by price, essentially a Biggleswade plot, if it was a full-size plot, would cost £287.50, which is, I think, probably the most expensive plot in the whole country. We really don't want that sort of name for Biggleswade. So I'm hoping that the fact that I emailed you about this 2 weeks ago and set everything out means you've had time to think about that, discuss it, and that it's something that you'll reconsider. I also pulled up a few things that I know were concerns for the residents, but also things that I know as a previous allotment holder I would have been concerned about. Again, the deposit of £150, I wrote exactly the same thing as you. It puts it out of reach of so many people. There's no concessions. There's no concessions on the deposit and no concessions on the price of the allotment per year either. And that might be one way that you can actually work with the Allotment Association on this. And so that's something I'd really encourage you to do. And, you know, the town council should be offering these allotments, not as a service, but as part of their offering with the town, rather than trying to make a profit from it. And I was really concerned by reading that ways to maximise profit at the bottom of that spreadsheet, because that sends out entirely the wrong message about the mindset that we have here. So on point 11, there was a question about use of tyres on the allotments. I know there was some concern about this because actually people like to recycle them and use them as containers. And if that's the policy, that's fine. But I think some justification for that policy, it would be useful. No crops requiring more than 12 months to mature. So asparagus is out of the question. Auto-flowering raspberries are out of the question. There's quite a lot of few currants and bushes that will be out of the question. I would suggest working with the Allotment Association to work out the things you don't want to grow on the allotment, rather than being so, you know, just blanket on in terms of how you do it. Depositing of waste, it's very clear that you set out what the allotment holders can't do, but I think it'd be really useful if you set out what the town council is going to do with its green waste as part of that policy. So the town council will use the waste bins at the end to dispose of its own waste, and it will do so in this manner. I think that's part of your agreement with the allotment holders. So I really like to see that included. And it's already been mentioned about the size of the sheds and the polytunnels, because actually it's, yeah, I've tried to allotment and, you know, you always want a bigger greenhouse. You always want a greenhouse. So I think those are the points that I pulled out. So I think there is a lot of work to be done on this. So I'm pleased to hear that actually you're not going to discuss it tonight and you're going to go away and think about it. But I would really encourage you to work as close as you can with the Allotment Association and the people that aren't in the association but really want to engage with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Just to point out on the question of the greenhouse, my reading of it was not quite the same. Was that it was 4 feet square, not 4 square feet, which is quite 4 feet square is quite a modest size, and obviously not big, but it's not too small, is it? Anyway, we will look at all these comments. Thank you very much. Is there anybody else who would like to make any comments?
Sorry, just for the benefit of the minutes, I think we didn't get everybody's name who spoke. So maybe if on the way out, they could just get the names recorded, if they're okay with that.
Oh, yes, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Page. Well, perhaps you could give your name now, could you, rather than let's wait. Your name, because we like to record the name of the people who've commented. Julia Duffy. Brian Barraclough, right, thank you. And we know Councillor Whitaker. Right, no, would anybody else like to speak? No, right. Right, moving on, we now move to the minutes of the meeting held on the 1st of February. So if we look at them now for accuracy, page 5, it starts in the pack. Page 6, page 7. Yes, thank you very much for your comments. Page 8, page 9. Page 10. So are they agreed as an accurate record of the meeting? Right.
Move it.
Yes. Right. Right, matters arising from the minutes. Page 5. Any matters arising? Page 6. Any matters arising? Councillor Fage.
Yeah, just a small one on 6AI Buttercup Mead. So I've had a bit of feedback from some residents that they're really pleased that this play area has been removed and grassed over, and they think it looks very nice. Once the grass is, sounds terrible. Once the grass has settled, though, it would be nice to think about whether there's any shrubbery or perhaps a tree that we might like to think about planting there. It's not something for the immediate future, but had some comments from residents about that.
Right, page 6. Matters arising. Page 7. Page 8. Councillor Strong.
Thank you, Chairman. I may have missed it, but on item 7B, allotment storage building, the public realm manager is to collate quotes, and these will be presented to the next PLOS meeting, i.e. today. I didn't notice that on the agenda. Have I missed something?
Yes, please.
It's an option, is that all right? Yeah.
Microphone, Peter.
Thank you.
One of the options that we were considering, and one of the items of growth that was put in the budget for the new year, was, well, I'm going to call it the semi-permanent structure as opposed to the shed, because we were expecting something that would be good to the eye, but would also make a significant difference for allotment holders. And that's what allotment holders asked us to do if we go back several months, and was something that the previous chair of PLOS was very supportive of, to try and make this happen. Several weeks ago, I went out and engaged with the Allotment Association. I had a very detailed meeting with them, with a variety of other officers. Representatives of the Allotment Association asked me that for the time being, they would much prefer, and I did share this with the chair at PLOS, that we did not proceed with this development, and that they would like the opportunity, certainly in this year, for things to just effectively get on with the other work that we've committed to, and we'll talk some more about the work we've committed to. But for now, they've actually changed their minds and would not wish us to get on and make this development.
Thank you, Chairman, for that clarification. I think that's fine, and as long as it's minuted to that effect, then we've got a paper trail through to show that it just hasn't gone by the wayside.
Yes, it certainly has not gone by the wayside. It's just, yes, as the Chief Executive has explained. Right, that was page 8, page 9. Any items, matters arising? Page 10. Anybody got anything? No? Right. Moving on. Items for consideration. Play Areas Project, to consider a written report from the Head of Governance and Strategic Partnerships and Public Realm Manager. So over to Kareem.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the officer's report that you have before you, members, sets out the recent history regarding the procurement exercise which had been run for the Play Areas project. The officer's report recommendation is to issue a simple tender exercise as soon as possible by using Contract Finder, which is an online service, and the SLCC sourced specialist suppliers for play areas. The plan on this now, essentially in procurement, is that once we have received officers have received expressions of interest from supplier through June. This will allow a detailed cost benefit assessment to be done on submitted quotes, which will have all the details for the Franklin's play area. At that point, officers will provide a further report to go to an August town council meeting, which will include the procurement outcomes, the cost benefit assessment outcomes, preferred supplier at that stage, and further planning, project planning recommendations specifically for Franklin's.
Right, thank you. Yes.
Could we be a bit more clear in regard to why we're recommending this slight change in direction, please?
Thank you, Mr. Town Clerk. Essentially, as I set out, I mean, the officer's report there does set out the recent history of, by that I mean regarding the procurement cycle, which has gone over the last several months for the specific project. There've been, we've adopted a kind of localist approach in terms of reaching out to local suppliers that we knew already, essentially, and that's come across untold kind of issues, if you like, with which is set out in the report there, which has been exacerbated furthermore by the pandemic and by kind of lack of buy-in, if you like, from the suppliers that we had actually reached out to. It's essentially resulted in us being able to work with a single supplier only at this stage.
And just to add to what Karim said, so obviously a single supplier doesn't meet our financial regulations, and bearing in mind the level of investment would not be something that we would recommend to members. So I think if members feel comfortable with this approach, it's also time specific, is it not? Cognizant that we need to get on and make things happen quickly.
Absolutely, it is indeed. So as I say, the timeline would be to following approval by members here and town council next week. We would be issuing a simple tender exercise using this mechanism I've just explained, which would have a response for expressions of interest no later than essentially the 8th of July, I think.
Can we also clarify that the potential bidders would be effectively subject matter experts in their field?
Yes, I can definitely confirm that they're specialist play area suppliers, which are set out on the framework, if you like, by the SLCC.
Okay, thank you. So we'll get clarification on that at the next town council meeting, you're saying. Fine. Okay, thank you. Yes. Comments, Councillor Fane.
Thank you. I don't think, yeah, I think correct me if I'm wrong, but I think all the information we need is in front of us. We make a recommendation to council, and then council should then just rubber stamp, hopefully, the decision that this committee's made. So we're not waiting for any further information, as far as I'm aware, which is a good thing. So in terms of, like, I think this seems very sensible, right? Because we can't go out to tender, just get one quote for the amount of money we're looking to spend and the complexity of this project. So actually, this is beneficial in that sense, but also it looks like we're getting sort of sector specific people who are actually experts in providing the sort of play areas that we're looking for, and who don't do, I don't know what other kinds of play areas there are, but if they're used to dealing with councils, then they seem like the sort of guys that we should, that seems like the sort of route that we should take. So I'm happy to move the recommendation as it's set out. I would just like to add, though, that I do think that just for absolute clarity, and I'm sure this is the intention anyway, but I do think when we have a detailed design for Franklin's with the artwork or whatever, this is such an important play area to the town. I do think that should come back to either this committee or council to be approved as our final design for Franklin's, whichever is most appropriate. So I'd like to move that, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Just to clarify, in view of the clerk's comments mentioning financial regulations, do I understand it? The idea is to actually get suitable people who will tender, that we'll then invite to tender, so that we comply with the financial regulations. And that is the reason for the proposal, so that we actually get the tenders rather than we just going to one because there was reference to one supplier in the preamble. So I'm more than happy that that's the case.
Yeah, was it a question?
It was a whole observation. The clerk was nodding, so
Oh,
The
right,
answer to Councillor Strawn's question was yes.
right, okay, fine. Councillor Foster.
I have to say, when I read through the report, comprehensive as it is, it's very council speak, for want of a better way of putting it. I found it quite challenging interpreting exactly what it is that was being requested and what the sort of the scope. So that may be to do with my intellect rather than the report itself. However, I found it quite challenging sort of working out what it meant. So that if I'm feeling that, then I go back to previous ones. We just need to make sure these things are at a point where people outside of this council environment understand what we're trying to do. So that was my first point. So the second point around the project management document. So officers are commissioned within the project plan and an indicative cost of £500, digital play area, renderings, etc., etc. Can you talk to me about what this is about? Is this specifically to do with Franklin, and is that on the basis of something that's already been put forward, or could you explain to me what that's about? And I guess I would like to sort of have absolute clarity what we're going to end up with following our, assuming that we support the recommendation. So perhaps in layman's terms rather than council speak.
Well, yes, please, Karim, if you can respond.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In response to Councillor Foster's question, the project management document essentially is going to have, we've commissioned a series of 16 digital renderings of our play areas, which includes Franklin's. And those I'm anticipating will come along with ownership content for the council, if you like, ourselves going forward. So we'll have that for the first time, which is a significant plus. And they'll also have, my understanding is, a supplier's specification of what their equipment would look like in situ for Franklin's specifically.
I'll just come back on that. So just to be clear then, so this is about a current reality. So of the play areas we're going to get sort of digital renderings of what the play areas currently are, and then potentially then that to be used for future plans in other. So I'll be honest with you, I didn't get that point from here. So that may be my interpretation of it. So I'm pleased to understand that that's what we're going to be getting, and I guess also the fact that we can then use that as a basis for future designs and how the equipment's going to go. So again, that's good news for me. So
yes,
thank you. So yes, I can confirm it'll be digital renderings of 16 play areas current configuration, but one of those will be Franklin's, which will have current and future with the specification of the supplier's equipment put in place in Franklin's, as per discussions that Jonathan and I've had with them. Well, Jonathan, that one.
And would you like to add to that, Peter, at all?
Yeah, only to say that I think this is a good solution, conscious that we haven't, with a lot of hard work from my two colleagues to the right, been able to germinate the right interest from the right specialist providers. The joy of doing this is effectively you're going out to specialists, you're setting them the parameters, and they're coming back with interesting imaginative projects and design that you can then consider whether or not it meets our aspirations. So it's kind of turning the problem upside down and asking others who know more about it than I. Sorry about that.
All right, are you happy? Are you happy then, Councillor Foster?
yes.
Yes, good. Does anybody else have any further comments, questions about this? We've had a proposal that is seconded. All those in favour, please vote. Against? No? Right, passed unanimously. Excellent. Right, item 6B, allotments plan. An oral update from the Town Clerk and Chief Executive and the Head of Governance and Strategic Partnerships. Peter.
Okay. So, back on the 29th of April.
Would it help if Councillor North turned his microphone on?
Yeah, back on the 29th of April, myself, Karim, Jonathan, Karen met with two representatives from the Allotment Association. One of them was the chair. and we did a walk around and an audit of our provision at the allotment. And we identified a number of areas of opportunity that we might like to progress going forward. And if you don't mind, I'm going to briefly list them for you and give you a sense about the work that we are looking at doing over the next year. As you enter the allotment area, right at the bottom part of the area, there is a gate that effectively hasn't closed for many years and is rigid. We're looking at either making good that gate or replenishing it with a new gate. And the logic of that would be that one of the consistent problems that our allotment holders come back to us with is security. And we know that it's very, very difficult to try and put a a secure gated area across all of this. It just doesn't easily work. It doesn't lend itself. So this is one of the things that we will do that will help with security. What we also want to do is Jonathan once a week goes around and does an assessment of the main drive-in area to make sure that the work that his colleagues did the other day, which I think, was it about 14, 15 tonne? How much was it?
Yeah, we put 6 tons down the first time, so I've been keeping an eye on it. It's not moved very much at all.
Okay.
To be fair.
So the main entry road now has got MOT over it. Obviously, the road is not owned by us, and we've never been committed to tarmacking the road. What we're also doing is the other internal routes around the allotments. We've also gone ahead and ordered the MOT, and approximately another 30 tonne of MOT is going to be laid along those areas, which obviously when it rains heavily, mud doesn't cope with heavy rain too well, and we can't put too hard a substance down. So that will help people navigate around the allotments as best we can. And again, our public realm team are committed to making sure on a weekly basis that is safe for our allotment holders to use. As you enter the allotments, particularly on the right-hand side of the allotments, there's quite a lot of overgrown shrubbery, and that will be cut back by our public realm team.
Yeah, it's going to be.
Yeah, to make the access better than it currently is. As you enter the car park area, immediately on the right-hand side, we're not sure why. I'm going to turn this on. We're obviously committed to making sure that we keep the area tidy. So we will take that rubbish away and make sure that we keep on top of it.
And we've also had a word with the Allotment Association to ask them to
Sorry, we're getting something on the screen about that people following online can't hear. I don't know whether Jonathan's microphone might be less temperamental than yours, Peter.
Let's try. And the last comment I would make connected to this is that if you look to the left-hand side of the main compost areas, I've been here for about 22, 23 months now. There are large mounds of earth and rubbish that people pile on effectively. And we are committed to cleansing these areas. Now, this is such a large area that what we cannot do is to layer it and prettify it to a great extent. But what we can do is people tend to use this as a kind of general rubbish dump for their odds and sods. And we're going to take that, cleanse it, put it away, make it as tidy as we possibly can. But the Allotment Association have asked us that we retain this area because also it's a barrier to discourage people coming in who are not allotment holders. So again, it supports the security issues that we've had around the allotments. Yeah. All that work is something that's being done over a period of time, and our public realm team are committed to making sure that happens, and we're having regular reviews connected to that. What we're also doing is we're meeting with the Allotment Association on a monthly basis to review progress and to listen to their voices associated with the piece of work. Thank you.
Councillor Foster.
I'm not familiar with the term MOT in terms of a road covering. Is this the same as road planings?
It's a little bit more robust than the planings. It's got varying. What happens is it binds itself together rather than be little pieces here, there, and everywhere. So, yeah.
But what does it actually stand for, please?
It's coming in bags. That's the only way we can get it in. So, yeah.
No, but I'm asking, this expression MOT, what does it actually stand for?
You get three types. You've got type 1, type 2. This is type 1, which is it's a mixture of finer elements and the next grade up, which is sort of probably 15 mil.
Okay.
I think what Councillor Russell was saying was, what do the letters MOT stand for?
I don't know.
We don't know.
I've got to be fair, so.
Right, okay. Right, does anybody have any further comments about this? Or any comments at all, indeed? Councillor Russell.
Just to say that it's a shame that the colleagues from the Allotment Association didn't stay and listen to some of this.
I was actually going to say, it's important that the points that the clerk has made are minuted in detail, and so that the Allotment Association can see that things are going on, and there are expenses associated with the allotments that they may not be aware of.
Perhaps I should speak slightly before Mark speaks, if that's okay, Councillor Foster. I have asked our public realm team to write some comms associated with this, and it's ready effectively to go, is it not? So this comms, has it gone out to all allotment holders?
Not as yet, because we're waiting for some.
Okay, so just to go on the back of what Councillor Frank Foster was saying, all of this is captured in some simple and well understood English, so that people can understand what we're committed to.
Right, Councillor Foster.
I welcome the clerk's information, much appreciated. I just would like, and I have made the point previously around oral updates. So for me, this is perhaps not an item for consideration. Perhaps it should sit in an item of information rather than consideration. So that's the first issue. I think the concern that the members of the public had was about information that's on the allotment plan not being in a report format, and I absolutely support that. So Peter, don't get me wrong, I think you've covered what we're going to do, and I totally appreciate that, but I think we just need to be mindful of the fact that the public need to be aware of what we're doing. So the minutes, I understand, will reflect that, but it could be helpful if you've made the notes that you've had, if it could be in a format that is just available to the public to see in advance, that would be really helpful in for future meetings. But yes, for me, it should be an item of information, not a consideration, because that perhaps concerns residents that we are trying to make a decision on the back of no information.
Just to clarify, Councillor Foster, I take on board what you said. I think that once the comms, which I think looks good, goes out, then it clearly commits the council to a programme of work, which I've tried to briefly summarise this evening. And that will also go on our website so that members of the public can understand what we're committed to.
Right, does anybody else have any comments about this, about allotment? No? Right, well, there was no proposal there, was there? But I think, yeah, I think it is important that the communication is put out as soon as you can manage it. Right, allotment policy and terms and conditions. Now we've had these documents which are not really entirely satisfactory and not really in a suitable format to be considered even, and they need to be brought together and consolidated. We've had some late-ish comments on this from councillors. So the plan is to hopefully by the next council meeting, or certainly a fairly close council meeting, you get a document which is the proposed policy and terms and conditions, which will then be presented to the council for consideration. And this will be after consultation with the Allotment Holders Association, presumably, and taking into account the sort of points they were raising. So that's the intention, rather than these documents that we've got before us this evening. Now, obviously, it will be fairly close to what we've got here. And what we've got here gives an indication of what we're likely to see, but we need one final document, which is the final proposal. Right, so Councillor Fage.
Yeah, no, thank you. I think it's right that we don't necessarily consider this in detail this evening. Sorry, everyone's microphone's on. And that one. Thanks. Yeah, I just to correct the record though, and to be very, very clear, this was emailed to all members 8 weeks ago. All members. I don't know how many we had, how many responses the staff had too. Okay, so if someone's saying it's unsatisfactory now, you know, it was communicated. So I don't think that's very fair use of language on our staff, actually, I have to say. And I don't think that's right. But it is right that there is further consideration to take on board here, particularly from the Allotment Holders Association. So let's just think about the sequencing, that we have a draft. I think it's a good draft. There's a lot of good things in there. There's a few things that I think probably need clarifying and making sure they're tight. I certainly have a few more comments, a few comments of my own. But then, you know, then we can consider this and bring it to council once we've consulted with them. But I just want to correct the record that councillors have had considerable opportunity to consider this.
Okay.
Briefly, so you can add to intelligence that we're going to consider. I think there's 3 documents that need to come back to council. Number 1 is a clear and concise policy statement that isn't too long, perhaps a page of A4 and no more. Secondly is a detailed conditions document that lays things out properly. Yeah. And thirdly is the individual contract that the user of the service will sign between the council and the user. And those 3 clean documents should come back to council. The council needs to understand how it's changed from the original to the 2B document, but we need to be not overdosing on the number of track changes. We need to be clear and precise what's changed. We also need to compare and contrast it with other neighbouring councils, and we need to make sure that the next time this comes before council, that there's been an opportunity for the Allotment Association and the broader family of allotment holders and their view to have been captured and listened to.
Right, does anybody else, any further comments?
Yes, please.
Councillor Mark Foster.
I welcome that, Peter, thank you. I think it was really useful to get the comments from the residents here who's taken the time to come to see it. I take on board Councillor Fage's comments around that the members had an opportunity to feedback, and I think on the whole, I think that it's a good document, but clearly what has happened is that residents have highlighted concerns that maybe we've not picked up on, and I think that's really the real importance of sort of the consultation around this. So I think absolutely that we make sure. I welcome the fact that we are looking to have a a simplified version so that it's quite straightforward for people to understand. And then if any people want to look into more detail, so there's the more behind it. And that's challenging because it's duplicating work, but I think it's helpful for residents to understand. So that I welcome that. And I think also the fact that we've talked about the residents highlighted the fact that who really uses the allotments. And I think it's important that we sort of as a committee understand and it's people using it for various reasons, and I think we just need to take on board the feedback and see what we can do in terms of policy, contract, etc. So there's a bit of duplication there, but I think it's well worth us consulting properly once we've got these three pieces, this information in place pieces. So, Councillor North, with respect, I don't think we should rush this. We should get it as quickly as we can, but make sure that we've got it so that we've got the right consultation and the right information there so that there's broad support across the piece, really.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Foster. Councillor Strawn.
Yeah, very much on the point that Councillor Foster's making. I think that we need to not rush it and make sure that we get it right. And it might well be appropriate to possibly defer the implementation of the increase in the rental of the allotments and the increase in fees that's being proposed until we actually look at the whole thick document in one, so it sets it out, such as the comments about the deposit. We've been looking at these and then implementing them, and I think it'd be premature to actually finalise it and give the notices until we've actually reviewed this. It shouldn't wait for long, but we can't expect it to come back to us next week, and it may be that we need another look at the documents before we actually come to council, whether there should be a very small working group of members to actually look at it with officers just to iron out any snags from the observations. And I must confess I'm probably the guilty one for having brought up recent observations not 8 weeks ago, but I apologise for that. But I think it's important that we get it right and take into account all the various points practical as well, but I welcome the clerk's comments about how he's proposing going forward.
Yeah, I think it's just a matter of getting it organised, isn't it? And Councillor Foster.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask the question on the garden buildings, 4 feet by 4 feet. I take the point it's quite a small area. I wonder if there is any regulation related to CPC with regard to buildings, that because this is a document that's been around a long time in various forms, and is that something that has been stipulated by CPC, or is this something that could be amended if indeed we wanted to amend it?
Well, I don't know. Do we know the answer to that?
Thank you. And in terms of the lease document that we have with CPC for the allotment site, my understanding is we can discuss this with them in terms of sizings of the actual structures, as you mentioned. Although that sizing actually is traditionally the size that has been, up until this point in situ. So yeah.
Now, does anybody else have any comments? No. Councillor Strawn, are you making a proposal then that we should defer the increase in, well, what the deposit, has that been agreed by council as well? Not yet, but the increase in fees has been agreed by council. So it's not that straightforward just to defer it. I mean, don't we need to, aren't there rules about changing an existing, what has been agreed already within 6 months of it being agreed?
Give some clarity, Chair.
Yes.
So this was agreed by council back in January. We cannot make any changes until 6 months after the event. It's applicable from September of 23 and is notifiable in September of 22. The council could commit to reflecting upon its earlier decision, and in the meantime, we could reflect on that without changing the decision.
Thank you. I think the town clerk has summarised the effectively proposal. That's what I was trying to get, to give the time to reflect on it, so that there is no breach of standing orders or other rules.
Right. Well, is there a seconder for that proposal? There's no seconder, so it's not put forward. Yes.
I will second it in a moment, although I'm a little bit confused, but does Councillor Foster want to?
So Councillor Strawn sort of asked the question whether or not there's we can defer the change in fees. and the clerk has said that we can't change it. Are we saying that there's no mechanism for us as councillors to make a, hang on.
He didn't say that.
So are you saying that there is no mechanism whatsoever to make, for council to make a change to a decision that's made? In my experience, I think that we have been able to do that. If 5 councillors, but I'm happy to be corrected, but I just want to be clear, if we've made a mistake, that if we made a mistake and we want to rectify that mistake, how can we correct it?
Yes, there is a method, as you say, by having 5 councillors propose a special resolution or something, and then it can be overturned. That can be done. But what the clerk made clear was that this was agreed in January, and after July, therefore, we can change it anyway. That restriction no longer applies, and so that any meeting can change that decision. So what Councillor Strawn is proposing is that we, at this point, decide to reflect upon the rises that have been agreed and think about whether we want to change them in or after July, before September, when they will be announced. So I don't think there's a problem or a procedural problem here at all.
Can I make a suggestion, Chair? Bearing in mind that this policy needs to be all-inclusive and accurate and polished, but why don't we look at both things at the same time? A, look at the policy, B, look at the fees, information more broadly, and reflect on that, perhaps.
Yes, but the fees are not included in the in these documents here, are they?
I'll second Councillor Strawn's proposal.
You seconded it, right? Okay, Councillor Russell.
I don't agree with the proposal that's just been put on the table. I think that what the clerk says is exactly right. We are reflecting on everything to do with the allotments after various input. And I think that what should happen is that a completely new proposal comes to council after the 6 months, but before September, so that we can make a proper decision overall on the allotments once and for all, whether it's the fees or anything else. All this piecemeal, doing this, doing that, doing something else, we've got to look overall at the thing in one go, and we need a proper report to council with all the pros and cons.
Well, okay. Councillor Foster.
And I absolutely support that. Right? So my clarification previously was not about whether we can, it was whether we can or can't override a decision. The information I was given was that we can't do that, and we can. So I'm happy that we review it in September, and by then we hang on, well, before September, so that we've got everything in place, we've done it properly. So if that means that we don't come to the next council meeting, whatever, that's fine. So I'll support that, and that as an option, but I just don't want us to be sort of tied to something. If we've made a mistake, we shouldn't be tied to something.
No, you're right, you're right. It is possible to change a decision within the 6 months if you go through the correct procedure, fine. Yes, and again, so there's not really a problem with it anyway. It's just you have to go through the motions. Councillor Strong.
I clarify that my proposal is effectively what's being suggested in practical terms. I may not have worded it quite correctly, but I agree that it's the overall approach that Councillor Russell's doing. That's what I was trying to get across with, because we'd already agreed that we're going to look at the policies that's being put forward on the basis the town clerk was suggesting. And it was just because within the policy and the decision already made, I felt it was important that we actually reflected on the rent increase. So I think I don't think we're actually differing at all, but if your wording is better, I'll quite happily accept that.
All right, any more comments on this? I think it's clear what we're going to do now. Are there any more comments? Right, all those in favour of Councillor Strawn's proposal, which may or may not be amended to reflect what Councillor Russell said.
Well, I'm sorry, either is or isn't amended. I mean, I will support the proposal if it includes a full document with everything, the whole policy and the fees.
That's what I was intending to imply. So sorry, I didn't make it clear when I proposed it.
Yes, but that's fine. I've got no problem with this, but we've already said that we are going to look at the documents and get those sorted out. So that's fine. No, if you're emphasising the need for it, pardon?
Before we vote on the amendment, Councillor Russell's amendment. So Councillor Russell's amendment.
Councillor Strawn has accepted what I've said, so I think all we need to vote on is that we are going to have a complete review of the allotments,
Yes.
both policies and fees.
Right, all those in favour? Against? Right, that's carried. No, it does need sorting out, certainly.
John, we didn't discuss that as planned.
No. Right, item 16, memorial bench, Dan Alban. For members to consider the email request as attached. Does anybody have a comment about this? Councillor Russell.
I'm not against the idea of a memorial bench, but I think we need to understand what type of bench is being proposed. What's there now? Is it going to be the same as is there now? Or do we have a standard type of bench that we would ask people to use if they want to put a bench in one of our open areas? Because otherwise you get a total mishmash. And I've come up against this with the churchyard where I worship, and it looked awful at one stage, and now we've got a standard policy and people who put benches there adhere to that policy. So I don't know whether we have a policy at the moment, but I do think that it's all right to agree this in principle, but actually the detail needs to be worked out. Do we have a standard, or is it going to be the same as the benches that are there now, in which case the whole area will still look good? What's happening? Because otherwise you just get something that's not suitable.
Yes, well, I agree. Are you willing to take that on board then, Peter, that it must, yes, in principle, possible, but we need to make sure it's of a suitable type, preferably the same type as is there already. Jonathan?
Yeah, I agree with you, Madeline. We haven't really got a standard bench, but that's something that we need to progress with. And it doesn't really, it shouldn't be the same as what we've got in the town centre at all. So it should be more in keeping with the areas that it's going to be in. So, and that's what I've been working with Sean a little bit on getting a standard bench for both the cemeteries, and so all what we put in is one kind of thing. So,
right, Councillor Woodhead.
Thank you. Councillor Russell's largely made the same points I have, but two supplementary points. One, yeah, I do think the standardisation of a bench needs to be discussed, and we need a policy on that going forward if we haven't got one already. But it was more of a broader question: is do we have any memorial benches in the town or parish already? I'm not aware of. I've seen any, but would this be creating a precedent? Because I know we've had a discussion recently about the British Legion bench, which was a slightly different thing than this, but that was obviously that didn't go forward. But it's just making sure that we're being consistent, I think, and if we already have some in town, what do they look like? Where are they? And maybe we can, just get a bit more information on it.
Yeah, there's only one or two. That's why you haven't seen many. They're in Stratton, I believe. One certainly, and there's one going in Stratton. That's in where the Muslim area is at the bottom end, on the right as you're going down. But yeah, we need to be more standardised on picking one bench and keeping it at that. I think because that makes it easier to supply as well. So and not massively expensive either, really. So.
Yeah, Councillor Strong.
Yeah, I agree that we need it standardised, and I note that the person making the offer is paying for the bench and the fitting, but there's one other issue that needs to be considered in the future. The bench will wear, it may deteriorate, it might be vandalised, which would be awful, but we have to be realistic about what happens with regard to future maintenance and whose responsibility it's going to be to do what and how much. It's all very well saying, yes, we accept a bench, but there will be a time in the future, regardless of anything else, where it may need treating with some seasoning or anything else. So we need to be quite clear about whose responsibility it is for what, and for the person who's donating the bench to be aware of what is going to happen in the future, because I don't think we can give an open-ended commitment to repair or replace a bench in these circumstances. So it's got to be made quite clear, and our policy needs to include that as well as the standardisation. Well,
I suspect in reality, in practice, it would come down to the town council to do maintenance on it.
Forgive me, that may be the practical solution, but we need to have the policy, and the person providing the bench needs to be aware of it, and the town council needs to be aware of it. It's no good just relying on goodwill in the future, because we may not be members of the council in the future, and we've got a year to go, and we may not be back next year.
Councillor Foster.
Goodness me. Goodness me, a bench policy. Whatever next. Yes, we need to have something in place. Let's just get it done. Let's have some consistency. The clerk, those of you that attended the walkabout in the Drove Road Cemetery will be aware of my concerns around symmetry and consistency. And I think that's right, because we need to have some consistency. So whether that's, I'm not sure what progress we've made on that in relation to the Stratton Way Cemetery, but we'll park that for now. But we need to definitely have something so we're consistent going forward and retrospectively at some point.
Right. Councillor Russell.
I think there are memorial benches in other places. I think there's one down by the river on our piece of land, and certainly there was a request for one in the Eagle Farm Road playing field. So I suspect there are benches, more benches than we've actually got noted. So I think, what's been said is very relevant. I just wanted to say, I think there are more memorial benches than we may be aware of. Okay. And the memorial, if it's a standardised bench, the memorial would just be the brass plaque on it that says whatever it needs to say.
Councillor Page.
Okay, I'll make a proposal then, please, so that we, could you microphone? So a proposal then, so that we write back and we say that we're happy to help accommodate this, and this committee is comfortable with the public realm manager making a decision about where the bench goes, that what kind of bench it is, and that it's standard across the town. So whenever we get a request about this, again, we've got the same kind of benches in other parts of town, and something, of course, that's in keeping with Dan Alban.
Right, moving on. Memorial tree, Stratton Way Cemetery. Does anybody have any comments about this? Councillor Page.
I know, it's a subtle difference, but a difference nonetheless. So we have started the process of going to the Public Work Loan Board for considerable sums of money, some of which will be invested in Stratton Way Cemetery. We know that we need to get a grip over some of the bits and pieces in the cemetery, and perhaps a slightly firmer hand over some of the practices which we see there. A bench is one thing in a park. A tree which will require considerably more maintenance than a bench does, and has a risk of potentially disrupting things like pathways or graves, depending on what happens to the roots in future. I have to say I'm less comfortable with this, and I worry that it's setting a precedent in our cemeteries when we should be trying to get a grip and standardise our offer there. So I'm actually not in favour of this.
Jonathan, do you have a comment on this?
I sort of agree with you, Grant, that because the other problem we've got with trees in cemeteries is they start uprooting monuments that are already there, which that's the last thing you want, is any movement in there. Trees twice and a third its height is the ultimate distance that the roots go out. That's quite some distance, even for a small tree. So,
Councillor Russell.
If Councillor Fage has made a proposal, I'm happy to second it.
Right. Councillor Brown.
I just hope there's a response. A response to the writer saying that
the bench, and maybe make the point, if we are going to reply to them, about the roots and the disruption that trees can cause in the longer term. Councillor Fage.
So, okay, I'll bear this in mind in the proposal, but I do have a proposal which has been seconded. We are in, if I'm not mistaken, in the process of reviewing our policies around our cemeteries, as well as the layout, etc. Now, it may at some point soon become the position of council that we don't support those benches. I don't know. I'm not preempting that. Is it better to say not yet? We're reviewing our policy. We'll come back to you on this, but we don't support a tree. In fact, that's my proposal.
Right, all those in favour? Against? Are you clear what the proposal is?
Yes.
Right, moving on. Item 7. Items for information. An oral update on planting arrangements in the town and the War Memorial. Jonathan.
Yeah, if I can discuss the War Memorial first. After considerable struggle, we've managed to get CBC to agree to paying for the War Memorial costs. That's now with Corinthian Stone, and they've been instructed to carry out the works with us being reimbursed from CBC. And I've also asked them to provide me with a date for completion of the works. So that's both the cleaning and the re-lettering on the north side. So that's where we are with that. As most of you know, I wasn't here in time to order the summer bedding for last year, but this year I've had a chance to do the whole process, and that started in August. The order for the plants, nearly 3,000 plants, went in late August. Each bedding design is completely different. They're all structured. The baskets are all in Jubilee colours, and the railing planters, the new railing planters on the War Memorial itself, they are in red and white, as was requested by RBL. They asked for that. Again, they'll be done for the spring bedding. They're going to be red and white. So removal of the spring bedding took place week commencing the 23rd of the 5th, and all baskets were hung up by the 27th of the 5th. And we commenced planting of all the beds and planters across the town. It took 3 staff, including myself, and with the raised planters on Sainsbury Bridge and Hitchin Street, we actually had the help of the Rotary Club. So for the whole day, they were fantastic. It was a good day. Nice to get a bit of community spirit, and they were really are helpful. They helped last year as well. The London Rose raised planter, that is now, it's in, you can't really see it. I can see it possibly, but it's got the shape of the St Andrew's cross behind it with a backing of red, and then the main piece is Sutton Hoo's mask, which is a Saxon King's mask. It's on display in the British Museum. So that it's a floral depiction of that. It won't look exactly like the mask, because obviously that's almost impossible to do in flowers, but it'll be the nearest projection to it that I can do. If that doesn't work, then we'll try something else. I'll probably go back to doing the crown, because that looked really good last year, but I wanted to try and make a change, because that's a very visible bed. You can see it as you come in and on the approach. So I was really pleased with that last year. So most of the floral displays are slightly in flower and need to develop, I imagine. And they will all be in full flower when I return, I hope, from annual leave on the 28th of June. So, and then I'll take some more pictures and pass them around. But I know that you will all go around the town and have a good look yourselves anyway. So,
Right, Peter, would you like to comment?
Just to say a very, very big thank you to Jonathan and the Public Realm team for all of their hard work. I remember last year when, even though Jonathan recently joined us, that the hard work of the Public Realm team and the different displays were very much welcomed by the community. And we do recognise an enormous difference in our Public Realm offer. What I also asked Jonathan to do, and I spoke also to the Rotary Club, is to make sure that we broadcast the good work that we're doing. So our website will be updated with pictures connected to our floral designs as they mature. Yep. And we'll also be doing some comms to our community connected to this, just to broadcast the good work that they're doing.
Right, thank you, Peter. Councillor Foster, did you have a comment?
I'd just like to sort of second that. I think it's the hard work that's gone into it, and it's paying dividends. So really pleased with that. Just a minor, I'm not going to say negative, minor challenge. The War Memorial planters, when you sit by them, which I've done recently, the actual planting is excellent. I think perhaps there's just a little, I'm not sure there's anything we can do with the actual planters themselves at the moment, but they're a bit scuffed and they don't look 100%. So that's my challenge back, is that is there anything we can do with them? So the planting is excellent. The actual, when you're sitting there right by them, your back's to them. They're sort of not as good as they perhaps could be, and I think that's a shame. So, and I know I'm being slightly negative here, but I think it's right to actually say, look, can we do something better, even better next time?
I'd just like to say that I've got all of the planters, all 8 of them. They are refurbished ones, and that's why they look a little bit scuffed. However, the plants are trailing plants that go over the side, so they'll cover up I'm not trying to make an excuse. They will cover it up without a doubt. But the difference in cost was each one would have been £484 each. I got all 8 for £484. Or £454, I think. So.
That's excellent. Thank you. I can see you've been working with Peter for a while. Thank you very much for that. Much appreciated. I understand the explanation. Thank you.
Councillor Strawn.
Just to echo the thanks, but perhaps we could also thank the Rotary Club for their efforts, because they clearly had a big part to play in this. So I think we should also record our thanks to them as well.
Yes, right. Councillor Woodhead.
Yeah, just another thanks really to Jonathan for the hard work of the Public Realm team. I think the work on the War Memorial, I'm sure, will look excellent in time for Remembrance Sunday in November. It's been long overdue, and I'm glad we've been able to get Central Beds to cough up some money for the community to pay for the repairs. And I also look forward to seeing all the flowers in bloom outside Stratton House Hotel, which I've walked past most days as well. So look forward to seeing more of that in the future. But thanks again.
Councillor Russell.
Just picking up on what's been said, I think we should articulate that it's not Central Beds money, it's Section 106 money, which we're entitled to for the town centre.
Thank you for that. Okay, moving on. B, War Memorial, I think we've covered already. C, Great Big Green Week. Update from the place shaping manager, who I don't think is here. Karim.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just on behalf of the place shaping manager, who sends his apologies. The Great British Green Week. This is a national sustainability initiative, which this year runs from Saturday, 24th of September through to the 2nd of October. Officers will be providing a full written report to the Town Centre Management Committee the 19th of July, which will set out some recommendations on what we are planning to do for this week, this time round, just by means of kind of briefly sort of setting out some of these things here to offer committee members a kind of snapshot. We're looking at providing an event on the square on each day of that week, inviting businesses in Biggleswade to contribute, and from surrounding areas as well, to showcase their green initiatives using our gazebos spaces. We'll be looking to go out to include community and voluntary groups as well, including also the Biggleswade Rural Community Charity, and doing all sorts of things. I have a very long list here, which I actually won't run through at this particular point, but that's where we're at with this.
Right, thank you. Question, Councillor Foster.
Can I make the point that to anybody receiving the agenda, website is here. It would be better if the website link was there and made into a hyperlink, so that should you click, you could this can't work. If you see
Good point, yes. Yes. Councillor Russell.
Just a bit concerned about the amount of stuff that seems to be being planned. And I'm just worried about the capacity of the council overall. And there are lots of other things that need to be done. So I'm just asking the clerk to please make sure that we don't overextend ourselves with some of this.
Councillor Page.
Thank you. I'd just echo that actually. I think that's really important because we have two big events coming up, which we know there's a lot of work required for Remembrance Sunday and the Christmas light switch on. They are by far the priority, and also mindful that with the Jubilee this year, a lot of time has been spent on events, and a lot of, you know, our budget for events is only so big as well. So I just bear that in mind, but I look forward to hearing what comes to TCM.
Right, thank you. Moving on, D, Linear Wood and Saxon Gate Pocket Park. Carry on.
Can I mention something? My suggestion for this debate is that Graham will give you an update in regard to progress with central beds, and then any commercial aspects connected to the discussion are then dealt with under exempt.
Right,
Thank you.
okay.
Thank you. So I should sort of preface this by saying that in due course, BCC officers will be providing a full written report on this topic with associated recommendations. We met with CBC officers on the 19th of May to discuss a smooth handover of both of these green areas. It was acknowledged, I think, at the meeting that BCC standards of maintenance are generally higher than CBC's with regards to green spaces. We agreed in principle, I think, that a 25-year lease could be undertaken, handing over both areas to BTC, with costs to be met by CBC for the first 13 years, 3 years, and then for BTC to fund the rest of that term, up to 25 years. The improvement works to both sites, both green areas specifically relating to trees and associated shrubs, will be done or would be done on both sites by CBC prior to handover. And there wasn't in truth too much to be done actually on those reports. And the most important thing I think at the moment is that we will be hearing back from CBC officers as soon as they've kind of cleared the agreement in principle internally themselves, and that's expected by the end of this month.
Right, thank you. Any questions at this stage? Okay, well, that will be further discussed under exempt items. Councillor Russell.
I just want to reiterate my disquiet with this, the 25-year lease. I've spoken about it at previous meetings, and I wouldn't want us to see us investing an awful lot of money over those years from 13 years onwards into an area that is then taken back by CBC. Because we speculated, and I don't want to speculate now, but we have speculated in the past about what might happen with those particular areas and what other use they might be put to. And I'm not happy, and I just want to reiterate that in this meeting.
Yeah, I mean, the better solution would be for them to just hand them over to us. Or why don't they do? Why are they opposed to just simply handing these areas over to the town council?
I'm just wondering whether we can get further clarification of this under exempt, if that's possible.
Oh, right. So that's the next item is item 8, a public open session. We have one member of the public. Would you like to make any comment to us? And do we have any online people? And are they indicating they would like to speak? Is he wanting to speak? Well, can you put him on then? Thank you.
Hi there, Andy Skilton. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Brilliant. So just MOT, this is for Councillor Russell. MOT stands for Ministry of Transport, and it was an old industry standard on types of aggregate. And I'm just pleased to have been able to put my highway engineer apprenticeship to use. Just on the memorials, I got embroiled in a issue with memorials at a local authority I used to work for. And we ended up having a sort of an arrangement where a member of the public would request a memorial and the council would set what that memorial would be and where it would be. And we opted for trees, and the agreement was, or not an agreement, but sort of a local arrangement was that we would have memorial trees, and the council would always be able to provide appropriate seating for people to sit near those memorial trees. And we would also pick the location. So it would sort of, if you wanted to do something like that, it's just a suggestion. It might sort of help, if you don't want trees in cemeteries and you don't want inappropriate benches in the wrong place. And just for the Green Week, the big Green Week, which sounds fantastic, and I've been speaking to some other groups and chairs of groups, you know, the various local groups that are concerned with sustainability in Biggleswade, of which there are loads, and we're going to meet and arrange some of our own activities. But might I suggest a car-free day, National Car-Free Day to 22nd of September, so you could sort of move it back to the nearest weekend, which would come in with the big Green Week. And I've had a look at the sort of town square, and I had some highway engineers that I know just look at it, and I think you could actually for a day close the high street and use the road that goes down the back of Asda, Church Street, as a diversion. And I mean, you know, you could do varying levels and at varying junctions, but perhaps the council might consider contacting CBC, the Highway Authority, and arranging a car-free day on one of those days, and extending some of the stalls, and maybe get a bit of a cafe culture into what would be considered a carriageway normally. And that's it, really. So thank you.
Right, thank you for that, Andy. Any other members of the public online? Okay, so we now move on to item 9, the resolution to exclude the press and public while exempt items are discussed. Are all councillors in favour of this?
Move it.
Right, well, the open meeting is now closed. Can we disconnect the